So, as a bit of background here, I'm 21 now and still live at home. I'm trying to get into school and whatnot. This house was brand new when we moved in, just built, so we were the first owners. My experiences aren't so much creepy as they are just strange. I think maybe I've just become numb to them or something. Anyway, here it goes. My first experience I ever had was when I was 12. I used to have a cable box hooked up to my computer monitor in my bedroom. One night, around 11 p.m, I'd say, I was woken up by my monitor turning on and the TV blaring at max volume. It scared the living hell out of me and my cat too. I jumped out of bed and quickly turned it off. Just as it fell quiet, I heard footsteps in our laundry room and the door to the garage slamming shut. A few days later, I was up in bed reading, and I glanced up to my doorway. I remember, clear as day, a pure white face peeking in before casually moving out of view. A few months after this incident, I'd been going into the kitchen one night again around 11 p.m. to grab a late night snack. But for some reason, I decided not to turn any lights on my way there and would just turn on the kitchen lights instead. Well, at the end of the hallway, just before entering the kitchen, I looked to my left toward where the dinner table was, and something was standing there behind the table in the corner. I kid you not, it looked like someone just standing there, with a bedsheet over them or something. I stared for what must have been a solid 10 seconds of calm, and then just casually went to turn on the light. I looked back, and whatever had been there was now gone. After these incidents, things became relatively calm again. I remember small incidences, like seeing things out of the corner of my eye, usually chalked it up to me just not sleeping enough. But everything I thought I saw just felt too real to be imaginary. There had been a night, around 1 a.m, I think, when I was in the living room just watching television on the couch, and out of nowhere, there was a loud bang against the window behind the couch. It sounded like a huge bird hit it, which I guess is possible, but at 1 a.m, that seems pretty unlikely if you ask me. Well, I was too afraid to look and ended up just convincing myself that maybe a moth hit the window or something. After a while, things started to go missing. When I was 13, my dad woke me up earlier than usual one morning, just asking me where my lunch bag went. I told him that it was in the same place as always, the second pocket in my backpack. He had to check for himself, and it wasn't there. Confused, I just assumed that I left it at school or something and went back to sleep. An hour later that same morning, I checked my bag a second time, and there was my lunch bag in the same pocket it was supposed to be. Dad swore to me that he never found it. I believed him, honestly, because when checking the bag, leftovers from yesterday's lunch were still in there. This was one of the strangest things out of all my experiences, and honestly, I just can't explain it. When I was about 14, I came home from school one day and found that the faucet for the tub had been disassembled and set neatly in a pile on the toilet. I called my dad, and he also swore again that he didn't touch it and actually ended up blaming me for it. At 15, this one's a little bit funny, to be honest. I was taking a shower and noticed the water had gone significantly colder. There was no way that I'd used up all the hot water yet, so I turned around and saw the handle had been turned to cold. This ghost, or whatever it was trying to get me to wash my hair with cold water like I should have in the first place. But now for the two scariest stories that I want to share with you guys. One might not have been paranormal at all, but hey, I'll let you guys decide for yourself. It could have just been an animal, but it was terrifying nonetheless. I was 17 at the time, and I've always had a fear of looking at windows at night. I can't explain, it just kind of terrifies me too. My core. Well, one night, I'd been laying in bed just Skyping my girlfriend when I glanced to my window. My bed is set right against the window, so I'm kind of laying against it almost. One of my blinds was crooked, kind of allowing me to see outside. And when I looked, two eyes, reflective ones, were staring right back at me. My house is a one-story, but my window is way too high off the ground for a raccoon or a possum to just peek through like that. Whatever it was stared at me for a solid 10 seconds before just disappearing. I made my girlfriend Skype with me, until I fell asleep for 5 nights after that too, because it honestly just scared the crap out of me. And the most recent event was just last week. It was about 4 o'clock in the morning, and I got up to use the bathroom. In the hallway, as I was leaving the bathroom, I stopped and looked to my right, directly into the kitchen just a few feet away. It took me a second to realize, but something was standing there, and as soon as I realized it, it quickly just walked off. Both my parents were asleep at the time, I can confirm that. And just a few days ago, my girlfriend had been using the bathroom when she texted me asking if I was in the bathroom. The bath is sectioned off by 2 areas. The toilet and the bath have a door between the sinks. And she swore that she heard a thud on the counter and something being moved around. Anyway, thanks to anyone who listened to this. I can't explain any of it, and I'm only asking if you guys have any ideas. So, a little background before I get to the story. My family and I moved into a new house when I was 14. It was newly built, and we were the first to live in it. It was my parents, my sister, and I, and throughout the years, we'd have family get-togethers and parties where everyone had a great time. When I was 15, however, at one of these family get-togethers, I was sitting in the living room with one of my cousins while everyone else was in the dining room or in the front room. The living room is connected to the kitchen, so no matter where you sit, you can always either see the trash can which had a flip lid while at the table. Well, me and my cousin were just chatting, and something caused us both to turn our heads. We saw the trash can's lid flip on its own. We got up to check, confused if anyone had gotten up to throw something away on. No, everyone was still playing a game or chatting in the same space. We figured that it was the vent above the trash can that made it flip or something. No one ever said anything about it again, but we were both pretty creeped out by it. We also had a babysitter who would stay with us occasionally, because my father was on a tour in Iraq and my mother worked nights. I know it's ridiculous for a 14-year-old to have a babysitter, but my mother felt that it was necessary. Besides, the babysitter was only 5 years older than me, so I enjoyed our talks and time together. She slept in the guest bedroom for a while before I noticed that she started sleeping downstairs. One day, I asked her why she didn't sleep in the room, and her face turned pale. She quietly asked, "Hey, have you ever had anything weird happen to you in this house?" I looked at her, confused, but remembered the trash can incident. I didn't reply though, and she just kept looking at me and then said, "You know, I'm probably going to sound crazy, but I think your guest room has something in it." I continued to look at her, not saying a word, and she continued, "One night, I got up because I felt like something was just wrong, and I went to check on you guys, and you were both sleeping. So I went back to bed. Laying there, I started to notice the statue doll you have on the nightstand was staring at me like staring. But I turned around and started falling back to sleep. And that's when I heard these whispers coming from the vent. I thought it was you guys again, but when I checked, you were both still asleep. She ended the conversation and went to sit on the couch, leaving me there kind of just baffled. But ever since that night, I started getting a bad feeling in my gut. When I was 17, we got a new dog who was a Chihuahua. She slept in my sister's room with her every night. And one night, I woke up to my sister just standing over me, and she said to me, "Can I sleep with you? The dog is freaking me out." I couldn't respond as I had just woken up and just kind of scooted over for her. In the morning, however, I asked my sister what had happened. She replied, "Well, I don't know." I was about to go to sleep when the dog sat on my lap and just started whining and looking at the vent. But she started barking, and that's when I took her and just went to your room. Again, I didn't respond. After a couple of days, I was still thinking about it. And it only hit me then about the babysitter that we used to have when she said she heard whispers coming from the vent. I tried to shake it off because a couple of weeks later, my little cousins were spending the night. So on one night, one of them slept in my sister's room and the other slept with me in my room. I didn't dare want to sleep in the guest room, so I slept on the floor with my cousin on my bed. Eventually, I fell asleep. My room was pitch black when I woke up in the middle of the night, but my doors to my bedroom closet were open. I had gotten out of my blanket earlier. I don't know why, but I suddenly started to feel nervous. I kept looking at my closet too. I had an iDog, which was a robotic dog that you connected to your iPod to play music, and it would play out of the speaker from its back. Depending on what music you played, it showed emotions with colors that turned on in the front of its face. Green was happy, yellow was for mellow, and red was for when it was mad. I remember that I hadn't touched it in weeks because it kind of ran out of batteries, and I hadn't gotten new ones, so I just left it on the shelf on the top of my closet. As I was staring into my closet, I started to hear growling, and I saw the iDog's face start to light up red. It barked and moved back and forth, and I reached up to my cousin to wake her up, but she was out of my reach. I was too scared to move, so I just sat staring, and finally, it stopped. I didn't sleep the rest of the night that night, and in the morning, I threw my iDog in the trash. Since then, I've kept my closet doors closed with a rope, and there's some changing clothes or something. But I noticed that there was a vent near the closet to dot now. The reason why I'm sharing this, I've almost forgotten everything, is because recently, my boyfriend has been spending the night at our house. I'm 25 now and still living at home while I'm finishing school. And my sister lives in New York for the most part because of school. My father and mother split up a while back, so he moved out. And my mum goes out a lot with her friends, so it's usually me and my boyfriend alone. My room only has a one-person fit bed, so we sleep in the guest room since my boyfriend likes to take up a lot of space when he moves around at night. One night, my mum was out of town for a weekend trip. I just got up to the bathroom and walked into the room where my boyfriend was examining the vent. When I asked what he was doing, he said, "Hey, I could have sworn that I saw something coming out of this thing, but there's nothing now. Maybe it was just a bug or something. Do you have problems with that sort of thing here?" I must admit that's why I didn't pay much attention since we decided to just go to sleep right away. But I woke up in the middle of the night because I just had a nightmare, and I actually just recently suffered from PTSD, so it wasn't uncommon lately that I would have night terrors or nightmares. But anyway, I woke up and looked over at my boyfriend, who had his back against me and was snoring away. I got up to take some pills and returned to the room. When I did, my boyfriend was standing under the vent. Jokingly, I said, "What, did the bed bugs come back?" He didn't reply. I then sat on the bed, and the only light that was in the room was coming from the moon through the window. I then said, "Hey babe, you can come back to bed," but he still didn't reply. Then I said, "Babe, you're starting to freak me out." He turned, confused, like, "Your mum is out of town, right?" I nodded, not knowing where he was going with this, and then he said, "Sorry, I don't mean to scare you. But it's the weirdest thing, but I swear that she was calling for help." "What? What do you mean?" I asked, getting scared. "Well, I heard a yell faintly for help, but it was coming from the vent." We decided that he was probably dreaming in the end, but we just went back to sleep. Well, he did at least, the next weekend. My boyfriend had fallen asleep first, and I stayed up reading. When I finished, I turned off the light and cuddled with my boyfriend. When I was just about to drift off, I could have sworn that I heard my sister call me. I looked up, and there was nothing there. I figured it was just me about to start dreaming, so I turned back to go to sleep, and again I heard my sister call me. This time it was clear, and I looked in the direction of the sound, and it was coming from the vent. I kept looking, waiting, and then I heard, "Over here." I knew I wasn't dreaming this time, and I knew it had whispered that. I immediately shook my boyfriend awake to tell him what happened, and he insisted that I was dreaming like he did the week before and tried to calm me down. He hasn't spent the night since because I don't want to sleep in the guest room, and I don't want to sleep in my room. I don't know what it is, but I just feel like whatever is in my vents is just waiting to come and get me, but trying to lure me under it for something. And I'll tell you this much, as soon as I can, I'm moving out of here. This has left me feeling extremely shook, and I'd love some opinions on this, especially from someone with experience. Last year, I had a very strange experience in the national forests in California. I was by myself on a road trip with my dog, and I was driving pretty far into a national forest. I like to camp in national parks and forests because it's kind of isolated, so my dog can roam and they're free of charge. It's a trade-off sketchy and rough drives into the park sometimes for lack of service and assistance anyway. I was driving up this dirt road, kind of curling up a mountain, around maybe 5 p.m, I think. It was very nice, out sunny and warm, with a slight breeze. Nothing serious happened, but I felt extremely uncomfortable driving into the area, and that feeling just didn't let up. Driving up the mountain, I felt like I shouldn't stay there, and I even texted my boyfriend about it for as long as I could before my phone completely lost service. I was looking for a sign of another person having been around the area lately, but didn't see anything. I pulled over and got out of my car with my dog to look over the edge and noticed a dead squirrel and some broken glass mixed in with the dirt and gravel road. My dog starts growling slightly. She is vocal, but I have almost only ever seen or heard her growl at or with other dogs. I did see her growling at an opossum once, so it could have been something that she smelled. Maybe the place continued to make me feel quite on edge, though, but I pride myself on being an independent traveler and backpacker, so I decided to continue at least a bit further with my grumbling pup to see if I could find a good place to camp. As we continued, though, I began to notice more dead animals. But keep in mind that no one is going to be going more than say 5 or 10 miles per hour up this thing. And that's if there's anyone even here. Human voices, and they sound close, and I think I should call out to them, so I stopped my car. But then I just kind of freeze up and feel like I shouldn't. I can't really make out what they're saying, and I didn't see any sign of people anywhere. I get back into my car and continue to slowly drive forward and cautiously looking for where the voices could be coming from. The strange thing is, I've never run into other people in the national park or forest when I've gone this deep. The unsettling feeling grows to about the voices, which have sort of come and gone a few times, and I give up and begin to turn my car around. At this point, I honestly don't remember how my dog was acting on the way down because I was scared and focused on just getting out of there. I just distinctly remember being surprised at her grumbling when we were standing outside of my car. But kind of dangerously quickly, I went back down the mountain, not seeing any sign of anyone. In the end, I decided to spring for luxury and got a hotel for the night. I figured that I was just fine, and it was just huge and open spaces that can be intimidating, I told myself. And the voices could have just been echoing from somewhere far off, and they just sounded close. Animals die, glass gets broken, nothing happened, cool. But I remember this place, and it sticks with me whenever I'm watching scary movies or if I'm walking my dog in the woods at night. Nothing compares to the feeling that I had driving up that mountain, and it's honestly kind of interesting to me as well as frightening. But I recently happened to cross some information as well as some Native American lore that made me feel extremely uneasy about the whole thing. So fast forward here, and I've mentioned this place to a few people and the haunting vibes that it gave me, but nothing much more. I googled the national park once and didn't see anything, but I didn't look much either. I like scary movies and things of that nature, and hence my fascination with this little event. So my boyfriend and I were coming off and finishing our road trip just yesterday. We were in Wyoming for a wedding. There were only 2 or 3 hours left, and the sun had set, so we decided to listen to some scary podcasts and YouTube videos. We went from the No Sleep podcast to the X-Files, and ended up on a true scary stories video dealing with Native American lore. I'm kind of half paying attention, just petting my dog, playing Pokemon on an emulator, and I hear the narrator mention Wendigos. It very briefly says what they are and casually mentions that they can mimic voices. I mean it when I say the most horrible chills that I've ever had in my life crawled down my spine. And I stare at my boyfriend and ask him if he remembers that national forest that I was freaked out about last year. He says that he does, and he reminds me that he texted me that I was probably close to a Wendigo, and I looked back into that text, and he actually did. I also remember him saying that, but I didn't know much about their lore and thought that he was just being funny like, yeah, Bigfoot is probably stalking you or something. And he was like, no. I mean, I was mostly joking, but I said it specifically because you said that you were hearing voices that you couldn't find a trace of. I feel really strange about this, and I start Googling Wendigos and find more information, etc., etc. But they're allegedly able to mimic human voices, and they would live in that sort of area. And it just kind of matched up. Obviously, there's a ton of questionable info out there, but I tried to find some more reputable websites and authentic experiences. I then specifically looked up missing persons in the area, and the first headline that catches my eye is another. Family goes missing. And I went through different websites and news articles of people going missing. But they're all a little hidden underneath national park websites and pictures of trees and whatnot. But I remember looking up the forest about a year ago and didn't see anything. And I realized that these stories just didn't seem to be talked about much, which also piqued my intuition. It was stated that well over 100 people in the past 8 years have gone missing and haven't been found there, on top of many which were just found dead. And the whole thing just has my intuition super spiked. Remembering how unsafe I felt and how much I just wanted to get out of there just terrifies me. And I felt so uneasy about what I was hearing, and still do to this day. My dog and I are very close. She was actually a stray that started following me one day, and I ended up bringing her home from Costa Rica, so her little growls along the way just make me feel like there was something wrong and more. The whole thing, yeah. I have done a lot of solo traveling, both in and out of the country. And I have to say that I've never had such a bad feeling on top of seeing an unnecessary amount of dead animals in a national forest, which just seems strange. I don't think I'll be doing any more solo traveling unless it's around civilization from now on. But does anyone know about authentic Native American lore? Or has anyone else had a kind of inexplicable experience like this? Extra points if you've had any bad vibes in national forests in California to so. I've had weird experiences my whole life, and to be honest, you'll probably hear more from me on here. But this is the first time that I've told anyone about anything that's happened to me. And this happened a few years ago, and I wanted to share it with you guys to maybe get some answers. At the time, I was living with my parents, and I was probably 19 or 20, I think. I had 2 cats that slept in my room during the night. Another detail worth noting is that my room was set up with my bed against the wall across from the door, my dresser at the end of the bed, and the closet was across too. The left of the dresser, so the opposite corner of my bed. My ceiling fan had one of those remote controls for the settings and the light. Super cool feature for me because I hated getting out of bed to turn the lights off at night. Anyway, it was like mid-November, I think, and I don't remember what time it was that I woke up, but I just know that it was the middle of the night. I don't know what prompted me to wake up so suddenly, but when I did, I heard a shuffle in my closet. I kept little boxes in my closet, and the left door slightly cracked for the cats to get in and out, so I assumed that it was just one of them in the closet. But when I turned over, my boy was right next to me where he always sleeps, and this made me prop up a little bit to see where my other cat was. I saw her silhouette in the dark, sound asleep at the foot of my bed. My mind was really tired, and to be honest, I just didn't care for the annoyance of being woken up in the middle of the night, so my head hit the pillow once again. Keep in mind, I've dealt with strange things my whole life, so I didn't think much of the noise in the closet as I was starting to drift off, though I heard something slide across the floor from my closet to the end of my bed. The sound could be best described as a stuffed animal or a cat toy sliding across the floor. I glanced over once again to see both cats asleep, and now I began to panic in the dark. I was still laying down, trying to be as invisible as possible. I felt around for the remote to the light. I quickly found it and pressed the button, and nothing. And then I felt something jump up onto the bed at the foot. It felt about the size of my cat, so it was a small animal creature-like. Now, what happened in this moment was just so terrifying that I don't even remember what happened with my cats. I'm not sure if they woke up and ran or were just unfazed completely. But this thing moved up my bed. I could feel the pressure and the movement of the sheets around me. I kept pressing the damn light button, but nothing was happening. And then this thing is on top of me all of a sudden, just scratching me. Started screaming, hoping that my parents down the hall would come in and save me. And I'm not sure if my screams were actual words like help or just terrifyingly screaming at the top of my lungs. But the creature felt like it had fur or hair, or something. I never actually saw it. And that could have been because I closed my eyes out of fear, or it was just too dark or something, but it started speaking to me. I don't exactly remember the sound of its voice, only that it kept telling me it's October. And now there was obviously confusion added to my terror. I mean, it was November, not October. So was this thing trying to tell me that its name was October or something, or trying to tell me something about October? I was just too terrified at the time to question anything, though, and I just kept screaming. And then, all of a sudden, the scratching just stopped, and it just disappeared. The creature just literally vanished before my eyes. I clicked the button once again, and the light finally turned on. I still don't remember where my cats ended up being, and I don't even remember falling back to sleep. But what I do remember is the next morning and having scratches on my stomach. But here's the even weirder part. When I told my parents about it and, more importantly, questioned why the hell they didn't come running when I was screaming, they said that they never heard me screaming. Yeah, my mom told me that she woke up feeling like something was watching her, and she looked up to see these eyes just staring at her from across the room. She explained to me that they looked like cat eyes, and the silhouette was of a small animal type thing. And then my dad told me about a dream that he had about a small furry creature. But I don't remember the rest of what he told me. I don't know what this creature was or what it wanted. And more importantly, what is the significance of October? Was it a demon, or was it just sleep paralysis? I often question my sanity about this, but both my parents had similar encounters, which validated my experience too. Has anyone else had a similar encounter? Or does anyone have any info on what this creature could have been? I mean, the whole event just still gives me chills to this day. So, a bit of backstory. First, my ex-boyfriend and I were still very good friends and occasional friends with benefits. He and I sometimes have threesomes with friends of his. Please don't judge my sex life. I recently went drinking with my ex, Connor, and his friend Paul Butt. Recently, isn't that about 2 days ago? So, Connor and Paul showed up Sunday morning at 7:30 a.m. Connor wanted to drink with me since he's being put on probation soon and won't be able to. So I went with them and got to know Paul a little. He's 22, but just broke up with his girlfriend of a year and decided to just avoid relationships entirely. He has a slightly husky build with an oval face and slightly beady blue eyes. His blonde hair is in a crew cut, and his style of glasses kind of make him resemble the BTK killer. Anyway, Connor, Paul, and I did our thing, and then Paul offered to give me a ride back home. Connor had his license taken away and has to go to classes to get it back, and I didn't want to walk home later as it was supposed to be a blistering hot day, so I accepted. He drove me home, asking if we could pull over and do it before he dropped me off, but I declined. I really only sleep with his friends because it's something that he enjoys, and I just want to make Connor happy. I'm sorry. He dropped me off and told me that he would hit me up to hang out sometime. He made it very clear that he wasn't looking for a relationship, which I was totally okay with. He added me on Snapchat, but he didn't try to talk to me, so I figured he was just another faceless person from my and Connor's sexual misadventures. But I woke up at 2:30 a.m. today to Paul sitting on my bed. He squeezed my leg, which is what woke me up, and at first I thought it was my brother JJ because he gets nightmares sometimes and will come into my room. But then I realized how weird it would be if he grabbed my thigh to wake me up. So I opened my eyes, and he's just staring over me. Hey, you texted me earlier, so I thought I'd stop by. I definitely hadn't texted him after he left. I checked my phone too to make sure I hadn't, and I was right, there was no conversation between us at all. But I was very groggy and not really comprehending the situation, so I told him how late it was, turned away from him, and told him to just leave. Are you sure you don't want me to stay? Are you okay? I came over to hang out. He kept his hand on my thigh the entire time. I was fully awake at this point and had this growing sense of this is bad in my stomach. I repeated that he needed to go, and he finally stood up, telling me to call him tomorrow. I grumbled, "I'm sure. Whatever, dude. Just get the hell out." He stood there for a minute and then asked me to walk him out to his car. I told him no, obviously, and he asked me if I was sure I didn't want to walk him out. He was oddly pretty, insistent on it, but I told him that he just needed to leave now, and I need my sleep. I have to be up at 6:45. I heard him start walking down the hallway, and my chest finally relaxed, a little that is, until he came back in. "Hey, yeah, there's someone downstairs, so I really need you to walk me out, okay?" I was mad at this point. Paul had interrupted my sleep, broken into my house. Now he had the audacity to demand that I walk him out of the house that he just broke into. "Paul, I'm not getting out of bed. Just go out the back door, nobody's going to say anything to you, okay?" He got the hint, and I heard him walk downstairs, and I heard the door shut. I waited about a half an hour before going downstairs and made sure that he was gone and made sure that the doors were locked too. I told my aunt when she woke up at around 4 o'clock what happened, and she told me to come and get her next time. I also texted Connor about what happened, and I don't want to tell my dad or uncles what happened. Don't want them to blame Connor, but I know I have to. But what happened was just so weird, especially with how normal Paul was acting about it. For a minute there, I thought I was overreacting, and that because I'm a bit of a people pleaser, Paul was allowed to do this or something, but my aunt pointed out that no normal guy would do this, and it's not mine or Connor's fault. I'm going to ask JJ to sleep in my room tomorrow, just in case Paul comes back today. I was staying in a hotel about 275 miles or so from home. I've been in the city for a couple of days, but we just switched hotels last night due to the fact that the other one was mold infested and gross. Anyway, we're here to drop my brother off at college, and tonight was his last night with us before we left. We decided to have a nice silly string fight in the hotel parking lot, run around the outside of the hotel, and just do fun, stupid teenager things. Somebody was actually on the top of the stairs that led to the second floor of the motel, watching and staring at us, which was no big deal though. I mean, we were being pretty loud and obnoxious after all. But my brother and my mum left to bring my brother back to his dorm room, and I decided to stay behind at the hotel room. All I had been doing for the past 3 days was riding in a car, and I just needed a break. I was on the phone with my friend Adrian, so I was just talking to Adrian when all of a sudden someone knocks on the door the same exact way that my mum does. We have one of those silly little secret knocks. I was about to swing open the door per usual, as I was 90% certain that it was my mother. But something just told me to look at the peephole for some reason. And the person standing outside my hotel room door was the same person watching us earlier on the top of the stairs down. I'm very paranoid, so obviously I just didn't answer the door and started freaking out and talking to Adrian quietly, and the person yells, "Open this door," and starts banging harder on the door. I sit there just talking quietly to Adrian for about 5 or 10 minutes and then slowly walk back up to the door and go to look through the peephole, when all of a sudden this person slams their body weight against the door and starts viciously shaking the handle. At this point, I text my brother on Snapchat at least 30 times to come back to the hotel. He says they're about 10 minutes away and just to sit tight and that he's coming back. He does, and by the time they get back, the person is gone. After everything that's gone down, I'm still pretty shaken up by this. Last night, I went to the front desk as we were leaving to go take my brother back to his dorm. I decided to go with him when they came back to the hotel. And we told them if anyone asks for a key card to my room, not to give it to them. As with this motel, they don't require any ID or proof of being in that room. You just have to ask for the key to the room number, and they apparently just give it to you. And apparently, my paranoia paid off, because, according to the front desk clerk, the same person came and asked for a key to my room. I'm not sure what would have happened if I would have opened that door, or if they would have managed to obtain a key to my room. But man, I do not want to find out. There's this hiking trail close to the school that I go to. It's about 2 miles. To the top, I think, and it has a beautiful view over the entire valley. So my friends and I went up one Saturday. The sun was beginning to set right as we started. The 2-mile walk down, but terrible timing, I know. But luckily, we know the trail, everything is good. But creepy though, because it's getting dark. And I'm a little bit paranoid about being out here. I'm not really paying attention, but I hear my friends say, "What's up?" I don't have good eyesight. So I looked, but I didn't see anything. "Hey, it's a girl," my guy friend said. I was freaked, because it's 9 o'clock on a hiking trail that's not a single other person is on. As we get closer, I see that she's sitting on the ground in a pile of leaves with her knees to her chest. She's also rocking back and forth, and only in a pink nightgown, and it's February. Yeah, my friends and I chalk it up to someone being on a terrible trip in the woods or something. Feeling bad since that actually happened to my friend once. We debated asking if she needed help. That was until my friend saw that she was actually cradling a knife in her lap, and that I thought, I'm out of here. More freaked out, we pick up our pace, but still think the girl could just be tripping. But we start joking and saying that it must be a terrible trip in the woods at night to try and calm ourselves down and all that. But then we see a man running frantically up the trail, asking if we've seen his daughter. And this girl was apparently about 20, not a little girl, although she was dressed like one. We say no, we haven't seen her, because we were freaked the hell out, thinking that we may have just seen a girl who escaped a kidnapper or something. As you can guess, we just ran the rest of the way after this. Unfortunately, where we were parked, there wasn't a single other car to call and give a license plate number to either. But we did call and report what we saw, and they searched. But we never heard an update to this day. I don't know what was happening in those woods, but I don't know if I ever even want to. By the way, there was no cell service until we got to our car, and we saw the girl when we were about a mile from that car. And it was almost pitch black, mind you. We had no way of being able to continue to watch her because it was just way too dark. We were also a group of 2 females and a male with nothing for self-defense, unless we were able to find something. If I'm being honest, it was just a really scary situation, and I was frozen in fear, and we had no way of knowing if someone was using a female to lure us in or what. I kind of regret not saying something, but we did as much as we could while trying to keep ourselves safe. Anyway, like I said, I have no idea what was going on out there, but it was weird. This is something that happened to me just a couple of months ago. I love Facebook, I love memes, I love talking to new people, I love long comment sections, all that stuff. But that being said, I never give away personal information such as where I work or live, and my birthday info is private, so on and so forth. I've made quite a few friends that I don't know personally, in fact, but agree with or have had really good discussions with. So, After commenting back and forth on a friend's post for a while, it was no surprise to me when Tyler messaged me. It started off fairly simple. We just talked about the post that we commented on. How do you do? Common interests, all that type of stuff. I was honestly excited to have a new friend, and he seemed pretty interesting, and we had a lot in common. I'm not a beauty queen or anything, but I let him know after about half an hour of casual conversation that I was taken happily. I enjoyed his friendship, but it wouldn't lead into anything more since I'm going to get married next year anyway. He seemed a little upset, to be honest, but respectful for the most part, which was good enough for me. I told him good night, went to sleep, and thought nothing of it. The conversation continued for a few days, though, and he started to get a little pushy. I didn't respond immediately and told him that I was very busy, so I may not always answer right away, and he apologized for that and told me that he's just bored and lonely. Well, I started to put a little distance between us, though, because he didn't really back down. I didn't want to completely give up on a new friendship because I hated the fact that he was so lonely. But one day he randomly messaged me saying that he wanted to have me in his arms, though. I immediately nipped that in the bud, reminding him of my relationship and telling him that if he didn't stop, then our friendship would be done because my respect and loyalty to my fiancé are above anyone else. And he immediately lost it, messaging me saying that he didn't care about my fiancé, making threats toward him and all that stuff. I stopped messaging him after this and selected to put his messages on ignore. He could still message me, but it wouldn't go to my inbox anymore. I made a post about it too, and a friend of mine commented and said that he had done the same thing to her, except he knew where she lived and would show up outside of her house. In fact, at this point, I freaked out and went to see if there were more messages from him because she told me that he was bad news and I should call the police if any threats were being made. And this is where the shitstorm really began. I heard him start walking down the hallway, and my chest finally relaxed, a little that is, until he came back in. Hey, yeah, there's someone downstairs, so I really need you to walk me out, okay? I was mad at this point. Paul had interrupted my sleep, broken into my house. Now he had the audacity to demand that I walk him out of the house that he just broke into. Paul, I'm not getting out of bed. Just go out the back door, nobody's going to say anything to you, okay? He got the hint, and I heard him walk downstairs, and I heard the door shut. I waited about a half an hour before going downstairs and made sure that he was gone and made sure that the doors were locked too. I told my aunt when she woke up at around 4 o'clock what happened, and she told me to come and get her next time. I also texted Connor about what happened, and I don't want to tell my dad or uncles what happened. Don't want them to blame Connor, but I know I have to. But what happened was just so weird, especially with how normal Paul was acting about it. For a minute there, I thought I was overreacting, and that because I'm a bit of a people pleaser, Paul was allowed to do this or something, but my aunt pointed out that no normal guy would do this, and it's not mine or Connor's fault. I'm going to ask JJ to sleep in my room tomorrow, just in case Paul comes back today. I was staying in a hotel about 275 miles or so from home. I've been in the city for a couple of days, but we just switched hotels last night due to the fact that the other one was mold infested and gross. Anyway, we're here to drop my brother off at college, and tonight was his last night with us before we left. We decided to have a nice silly string fight in the hotel parking lot, run around the outside of the hotel, and just do fun, stupid teenager things. Somebody was actually on the top of the stairs that led to the second floor of the motel, watching and staring at us, which was no big deal though. I mean, we were being pretty loud and obnoxious after all. But my brother and my mum left to bring my brother back to his dorm room, and I decided to stay behind at the hotel room. All I had been doing for the past 3 days was riding in a car, and I just needed a break. I was on the phone with my friend Adrian, so I was just talking to Adrian when all of a sudden someone knocks on the door the same exact way that my mum does. We have one of those silly little secret knocks. I was about to swing open the door per usual, as I was 90% certain that it was my mother. But something just told me to look at the peephole for some reason. And the person standing outside my hotel room door was the same person watching us earlier on the top of the stairs down. I'm very paranoid, so obviously I just didn't answer the door and started freaking out and talking to Adrian quietly, and the person yells, "Open this door," and starts banging harder on the door. I sit there just talking quietly to Adrian for about 5 or 10 minutes and then slowly walk back up to the door and go to look through the peephole. When all of a sudden, this person slams their body weight against the door and starts viciously shaking the handle. At this point, I text my brother on Snapchat at least 30 times to come back to the hotel. He says they're about 10 minutes away and just to sit tight and that he's coming back. He does, and by the time they get back, the person is gone. After everything that's gone down, I'm still pretty shaken up by this. Last night, I went to the front desk as we were leaving to go take my brother back to his dorm. I decided to go with him when they came back to the hotel. And we told them if anyone asks for a key card to my room, not to give it to them. As with this motel, they don't require any ID or proof of being in that room. You just have to ask for the key to the room number, and they apparently just give it to you. And apparently, my paranoia paid off, because, according to the front desk clerk, the same person came and asked for a key to my room. I'm not sure what would have happened if I would have opened that door, or if they would have managed to obtain a key to my room. But man, I do not want to find out. There's this hiking trail close to the school that I go to. It's about 2 miles to the top, I think, and it has a beautiful view over the entire valley. So my friends and I went up one Saturday. The sun was beginning to set right as we started the 2-mile walk down, but terrible timing, I know. But luckily, we know the trail, everything is good. But creepy though, because it's getting dark, and I'm a little bit paranoid about being out here. I'm not really paying attention, but I hear my friends say, "What's up?" I don't have good eyesight. So I looked, but I didn't see anything. "Hey, it's a girl," my guy friend said. I was freaked, because I mean, it's 9 o'clock on a hiking trail that's not a single other person is on. As we get closer, I see that she's sitting on the ground in a pile of leaves with her knees to her chest. She's also rocking back and forth, and only in a pink nightgown, and it's February. Yeah, my friends and I chalk it up to someone being on a terrible trip in the woods or something. Feeling bad since that actually happened to my friend once. We debated asking if she needed help. That was until my friend saw that she was actually cradling a knife in her lap, and that I thought, I'm out of here. More freaked out, we pick up our pace, but still think the girl could just be tripping. But we start joking and saying that it must be a terrible trip in the woods at night to try and calm ourselves down and all that. But then we see a man running frantically up the trail, asking if we've seen his daughter. And this girl was apparently about 20, not a little girl, although she was dressed like one. We say no, we haven't seen her, because we were freaked the hell out, thinking that we may have just seen a girl who escaped a kidnapper or something. As you can guess, we just ran the rest of the way after this. Unfortunately, where we were parked, there wasn't a single other car to call and give a license plate number to either. But we did call and report what we saw, and they searched. But we never heard an update to this day. I don't know what was happening in those woods, but I don't know if I ever even want to. By the way, there was no cell service until we got to our car, and we saw the girl when we were about a mile from that car, and it was almost pitch black, mind you. We had no way of being able to continue to watch her because it was just way too dark. We were also a group of 2 females and a male with nothing for self-defense, unless we were able to find something. If I'm being honest, it was just a really scary situation, and I was frozen in fear, and we had no way of knowing if someone was using a female to lure us in or what. I kind of regret not saying something, but we did as much as we could while trying to keep ourselves safe. Anyway, like I said, I have no idea what was going on out there, but it was weird. This is something that happened to me just a couple of months ago. I love Facebook, I love memes, I love talking to new people, I love long comment sections, all that stuff. But that being said, I never give away personal information such as where I work or live, and my birthday info is private, so on and so forth. I've made quite a few friends that I don't know personally, in fact, but agree with or have had really good discussions with. So, after commenting back and forth on a friend's post for a while, it was no surprise to me when Tyler messaged me. It started off fairly simple, we just talked about the post that we commented on, how do you do, common interests, all that type of stuff. I was honestly excited to have a new friend, and he seemed pretty interesting, and we had a lot in common. I'm not a beauty queen or anything, but I let him know after about half an hour of casual conversation that I was taken happily. I enjoyed his friendship, but it wouldn't lead into anything more since I'm going to get married next year anyway. He seemed a little upset, to be honest, but respectful for the most part, which was good enough for me. I told him good night, went to sleep, and thought nothing of it. The conversation continued for a few days, though, and he started to get a little pushy. I didn't respond immediately and told him that I was very busy, so I may not always answer right away, and he apologized for that and told me that he's just bored and lonely. Well, I started to put a little distance between us, though, because he didn't really back down. I didn't want to completely give up on a new friendship because I hated the fact that he was so lonely. But one day he randomly messaged me saying that he wanted to have me in his arms, though I immediately nipped that in the bud, reminding him of my relationship and telling him that if he didn't stop, then our friendship would be done because my respect and loyalty to my fiancé are above anyone else. And he immediately lost it, messaging me saying that he didn't care about my fiancé, making threats toward him and all that stuff. I stopped messaging him after this and selected to put his messages on ignore. He could still message me, but it wouldn't go to my inbox anymore. I made a post about it too, and a friend of mine commented and said that he had done the same thing to her, except he knew where she lived and would show up outside of her house. In fact, at this point, I freaked out and went to see if there were more messages from him because she told me that he was bad news and I should call the police if any threats were being made. And this is where the shitstorm really began. He had messaged me over a dozen times different things. It started off kind of taunting me for not answering and then moved into him messaging me about some guy who cut him off as he was driving too slow for his taste or something, then him saying that he was going to shoot the guy and it would be my fault because I made him so angry by ignoring him. I messaged him telling him to just leave me the hell alone and stopped replying for a while. But he started messaging me and narrowing down where I live. And that really freaked me out as I had never told him where I lived or anything even remotely close to my house. The only thing I'd ever said was I'd talk to him later because I was going to Arby's to get some food and my phone was dying. Yet he somehow knew that I was 7 minutes away from the Arby's, by the house exactly how long it takes to walk there from my end. There are several Arby's in my city. Then he started narrowing down to what street I lived off of, but somehow knowing a 4-door black sedan was linked to my address, which, mind you, there was, but it wasn't in my name. It was in my sister's name when she registered it as a new car, and that was enough for me, and I called the non-emergency line. The police refused to do anything, of course, saying until he actually showed up or did something. There was nothing they could do, never mind that he was sending me pictures of dead people and saying that he was going to kill my family and was narrowing down my address. Unless he actually showed up, I was pretty much screwed. All I could do was apply for a protective order, and so I did. He kept messaging me, though, so I told him that there was a protective order in place, and he needed to leave me alone. He responded with there was nothing that could be done until he was served, which, to be honest, was true. My fiancée is actually in IT and has a cousin who's pretty tech-savvy as well, and they managed to get the last couple of addresses Tyler had, but the police couldn't find him at either of those. We had license plate numbers and addresses and full names and birthdays, yet he seems pretty much completely untraceable. Strangely enough, though, he actually stopped for a while, but the day of my court case, to have the PO extended for 2 years, he started up again. My fiancé actually filed criminal charges for the threats that he made, and he said that someone could come shoot you in 15 minutes. His last known address was actually a 15-minute drive away from my house, which was really creepy too. I've spent the last couple of months completely afraid, and he was actually arrested and served, finally. I think he was speeding or something, and it turns out he has a history of this, multiple charges, all dropped and dismissed, of course. But he's done it to a couple of my friends who showed up to my court case for the criminal charges. He dropped everything from felonies to misdemeanor conduct, charged with 12 months suspended jail time depending on his behavior, because they couldn't prove that it was him and not someone else behind the keyboard. Especially with me never seeing his face in real life before this court date. Even though I had 2 people who had received messages from him and seen him face to face as well. Anyway, currently I can't sleep, and the slightest noise wakes me up panicking, and it's been just hell for my family. I just really hope that this whole thing ends soon. When I was little, around 7, I'd say I lived with my mum and my sister. We have different dads, but the same mum. My mother and father had separated a couple of years before and lived apart, and my dad lived about 2 hours away, and I saw him every other weekend. Since the separation, Mum had gone on various dates with different people, but they never really worked out. At this point, I would also like to mention that my mum drank a lot of alcohol. She had a hard life, and alcohol had been a way for her to cope with it. And I've made my peace with it. She's a little better today anyway. But one morning, I remember waking up and going into my mom's room and seeing a strange man in bed with her. Nothing completely unusual, just another date that I'd probably never see again. However, since then, the date John never really left our lives, and my mum just ended up dating him. John was actually nice at first and would let me and my sister, who's 6 years older than me, stay at his house when my mum did. He would give us sweets and all sorts of stuff. However, eventually, and I can't really remember when John began to become abusive. Honestly, I was so young that it all feels like a blur now. but I can recall bits and pieces of information. I remember him and my mum getting into arguments, and he would break stuff around the house and at points even hit my mum. But later on, I learned that he did stuff like rip my mom's earrings out and hold a samurai sword to her throat. Every time that they would get into a fight, he would leave at stupid times like 3 o'clock in the morning, and my mum would leave a bit later to go after him. I assume which would leave me and my sister, then 13, to look after me and to get me ready for school and whatnot. After school, I would walk out to see both John and my mum in the car just waiting for me, and I would always feel dread because he would still be in our lives, you know? You might think that that would be the creepy part to this story. No, you see, John was in this organizational club for men. I don't want to say the name of it here because of anonymity reasons, but it was all very secretive. He was never allowed to talk about what happened at their meetings to my mum or even to us. Women were not allowed to join either, and the only time women could join events was the annual ladies' event that they often held, which my mum would go to around the same time. My nonwho lives very close to Uscott into a relationship with a man named Kenny. Kenny was also a part of this organization, and him and John were very friendly with each other. My mum strongly believes that Kenny and John actually knew each other before they knew my nan and my mum. Kenny was also very abusive toward my nan, to the point that, once he knocked her tooth out, Kenny and John's friendship all came to an end. One night though, when my mum and John were visiting my nan and Kenny, my sister and I were visiting her dad's. What my mum remembered was that she was offering to make Kenny a roast dinner for tomorrow, but she then went to the toilet, and when she came back, she heard the conversation between Kenny and John become heated. But before she could even turn around to see what was going on, she felt 2 punches to the neck. John pushed her and yelled at her to run, and when she turned around, she saw Kenny stabbing John 8 times. Somehow, they escaped out the front door with my nan, and it was only then that my mum realized that she'd been stabbed in the back of the neck twice. Eventually, the police turned up, and Kenny was arrested whilst my mum and John were taken to hospital. Luckily, they both survived. We never did find out the reason why Kenny just suddenly became hostile and stabbed my mom and John. But honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if it was something to do with this organization that they shared. We never saw Kenny again after the court case ended, but we believe that he may have gotten into a psychiatric hospital. Apparently, he pleaded that a mental illness had pushed him to stab them or something. After Kenny was gone, my nun, who actually had schizophrenia, came to stay with us for a while until she felt safe and mentally sound to go back home. I really do think too that Kenny really did a number on her, and she was just never quite right after all that, you know? Despite creepy Kenny being gone, John was still around, which didn't make life any easier. He made life hell for us, in fact constantly getting angry, hitting my mum, getting angry at me and my sister. On one occasion, I remember I dropped and broke a pot of mustard on the floor. And I remember my mum and I just kind of froze because we were so terrified of how John would react. My sister, being a bit older than me, remembers a lot of the creepy things that she caught him doing, such as sitting on my bed one night when I was at my dad's. When she asked him what he was doing, he said, "Where else would I be?" My sister walked into my mum crying once. She asked what was wrong, and John literally said to a 16-year-old that her mum was just sexually assaulted. He made me and my mum go for walks at midnight around the neighborhood if we made him angry. My sister can't remember why, but she once was so terrified and upset at John that she ran out of the house barefoot and ran all the way to her dad's house, which was about a 10-minute walk away. When she arrived at her dad's house, John was already waiting there and said, "I wanted to make sure that you were okay." And that really messed with my sister because she left the house before John did, and she sprinted to her dad's house. The only way that he would have made it there before her was if he ran to Dot. My mom became very strange and weird during this time, with John doing things that she never had done before, as if she was having some sort of mental breakdown or something. At the time, we believed it was just because John was abusive and because of the alcohol. However, in recent years, she's admitted to us that she actually believed that John was drugging her. She even ended up marrying him overnight with only 2 witnesses, both from the secret organization, mind you. She looked drugged up in the wedding photos too, and we only found out that they were married a week later. She never felt right in her time with him too, and she told us that whenever she went to the ladies' nights, she wouldn't remember the night in the slightest. One night, in fact, John made the creepiest comment toward my sister when she was around 13. They were talking about the ladies' night, and he said, "Now that you're old enough, we'll buy you a pretty dress, and you can come to the ladies' night with us." My sister told me that when he said that, she felt so uncomfortable and hated the idea of it, and just completely refused to go outright. He made the same comment to me when I was 10, saying that when I was a bit older, I could go. I remember being really excited about buying a dress and being able to go to the secret club that my mum often went to. But after learning about how my mum never remembered the ladies' nights, I'm pretty glad that I never got the chance to go. I was 11 when I woke up to the sound of my mum screaming. Yeah, John had passed away. He was diabetic, but he was terrible at managing his insulin levels, and he just died from too much fluid in his lungs. That was both the worst and best day of my life. I mean, I would never wish anyone dead, but when John passed away, I must admit that I felt a huge weight lift off of my chest. I know that that's an awful thing for an 11-year-old to feel. I mean, I shiver whenever I think about what our lives might have been like if he was still alive, though, and I wonder if we would have even survived. Anyway, I just want to add one more thing to the story, because on one occasion, John got beat up really badly, so badly that a couple of his ribs broke, and John got the police involved, but the culprit was just never found. A few months ago, my dad and I were talking, and he finally admitted that the person that beat up John was my dad's brother. Apparently, everyone knew, even John, but no one told the police because they all thought that he deserved it. This event took place about 25 years ago, I'd say, so I apologize in advance if it's not as detailed as you'd like. I want to stay as true to the memory as possible, though, and I only want to share what I remember. If there are any questions or comments which trigger more details, I'll gladly flesh it out a bit. Though so, I was 7, and my younger sister was 5, and we disembarked the school bus hand in hand, excited about our first week of school, ready to tell Mum all about it. We rounded the corner for home and saw that there was no car in the driveway. My little sister was happily chatting about her teacher and new friends and the playground. But for some reason, I just felt unsettled. Why was Mum gone? Mum was always waiting for us, usually with fresh fruit or veggies. I mean, she was ahead of the curve on that. But the no junk food rule embarrassed me as a kid. But I'm so grateful for that now. Well, maybe just the car was gone, silly thought. But then, not everyone's a genius when they're only 7, right? As we reached the intersection of the porch and driveway, I knew the car was gone because Mum was gone because the front door was shut. But we weren't latchkey kids, although that was quite normal in our neighborhood. I must admit. But I did have a house key, just in case. I always wondered what our parents had meant by giving us this key, but this must have been the case. I released my little sister's hand and knelt down to fish the key out of the bottom of my pouch with my backpack. I was a little nervous, I must admit, but proud, I remember. And when I rose to unlock the door, I froze. Looking down on us from inside the house was a figure dressed head tuto in all black. It's in my mind now this camouflage was so complete that there wasn't anything revealed around the eyes to indicate this person's race or anything. I stopped with the key in my hand, and although I had no intention of getting in now, the figure shook its head back and forth as if to say no. I had dropped the key and urged my little sister off the porch immediately. I was not at a complete loss for what to do in this situation, so I led my little sister to the side yard where we had a tire swing and a rope swing and told her that we would just wait for Mum. This had not been part of a just-in-case conversation. When I folded myself into the tire swing, in fact, I realized that I had wet my pants. My little sister asked me what was wrong, and lying was never my strong point, so I told her that someone was in the house. She looked puzzled and said to me, "It's just Daddy's friend." My eyes grew house-sished, she knew, and she answered that she just did. I told her that we would wait for Mum anyway, but that was weird. I don't know how long it was that we waited. I was frightened, hungry, and uncomfortable in my wet pants. Whoever was in the house left from the back door because after some time, my dog darted around the house and happily greeted us. The fence was actually being redone in the back, and everyone who lived in our house knew to put him on a chain rather than just let him run freely and escape through the gaps at all. Upon Sunny's arrival, my little sister was ready to go in, and why not? We argued in the way kids do, exchanging witty insults such as dum-dum and stupid head. But I was able to win the battle due to the merit of my age. Eventually, Mum finally pulled into the driveway, and Sunny and I beelined straight to her. I had given in to the tears that I had been repressing, and the only thing that shocked me out of my hysterics was Mum urging me to come into the house. I managed to finally tell her about the man in black, and my little sister chimed in with Daddy's friend, and then Mum said, all of us back into the car, even Sunny. We drove a few blocks to a friend's house. The police were called, and we were questioned together and separately, and we were left with Mum's friend while she and the officers walked through the house. And all there had been was a break-in focused on the basement, Dad's territory, and my parents' bedroom. But strangely enough, if anything was gone, Mum didn't know what it was. And Dad feigned innocence in relation to his friend. Nothing like this ever happened again after this. And when I asked Mum if she remembered it, she told me that the past is better left there. Honestly, I've never been that scared since, and I hope I never will be again. So, this is my dad's story, and just to explain, he's ex-British Army and not scared of anything, man. Super practical. So he became a lorry driver about 1975, I think. And this was not long after he started. So this happened about 5 a.m. on a summer's day. It was a bit misty, like it gets some mornings early, but it was bright. And he was heading out of London on the A3. He's driving his lorry, and up ahead was a young woman, early 20s, a long blue dress, just standing by the side of the road. It must have been before the A3 was duelled, and all the barriers were put up anyway, so Dad sees her and thinks that she's just waiting for a ride to work or something. But just as he's about to pass her, though, she jumps in front of his lorry. He immediately slams on the brakes as he's sure that he's hit her now. But he didn't feel a bang, but where else could she have been? right. A couple of cars stopped to see what's going on, and Dad shakily explains what happened, and the drivers kindly offered to stay while he looks for her under the lorry. Dad looks, and she's not there. Other drivers look, and there's nothing, no body, no blood, no sign of anyone. They all freak out a bit because they saw the woman too, and then just decide to leave because it was the best idea that they had. He still can't explain it, and he knows that she was there and he even hit her. And he spent the rest of his driving career avoiding that road. I haven't actually told anyone about my experience with the ghosts at my dad's old house. And I haven't formally discussed it in years, I think. But my dad bought a beautiful home back in 2004 and 2005 that had a huge backyard and rested in a quiet neighborhood. The area had no historical significance that I'm aware of, but I have not researched anything since living there, so I'm not too sure. After moving in, I explored the backyard a couple of times and found a path out in the middle of the garden. That looked old. If you followed it, it led to this old run-down shed door, at least remnants of some shed of some sort. I always felt like there was some connection with our house or property to this old run-down shed hidden in the woods too. But I could just never really explain it. My dad and I do not believe in ghosts or anything. He was raised Catholic by his parents, and they raised me the same way. We didn't watch any paranormal shows, but we did watch a scary movie or two that we enjoyed once in a while. At the time my dad purchased this house, he got married shortly after that to his wife, and she brought along her youngest son when they moved in with my dad. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary over the next year. Their marriage was failing terribly, to say the least. Lots of fighting was occurring, and I was always filled in by my stepbrother when I came over on the weekends to visit. I'll never forget a night when I went into the kitchen and my stepbrother followed me in like usual. He discussed the possibility of divorce with my dad and his mum, but also brought up some really weird things that had been happening around the house. He described to me that he would be playing video games with his door open and he kept seeing things out of the corner of his eye. He also said that he would hear someone walking around the carpet in the hallway, but no one would be there. I immediately dismissed everything he told me, though, because I thought that he was just trying to scare me or something. Fast forward a couple of weeks later, and my dad's now ex-wife moved out of our house and took her son with her. We had some empty rooms in our house now, with one being right next to my bedroom, but the house was laid out very long horizontally, if that makes sense. My bedroom and the guest room on one side of the house, living room and kitchen in between, and then the other side of the house had my dad's room and another guest room. There was just one long hallway that connected the two sides of the house, and I came to eventually despise it too, so I began to see things out of the corner of my eyes. When I visited my dad too, just sudden things moving, and by the time I looked, there was nothing there. At night, I would hear sounds of what I didn't want to admit were footsteps in the hallways outside my bedroom. But I had to, after a while, just little weird things that eventually I couldn't ignore any longer. Finally, one weekend, I confronted my dad about what I'd been experiencing. I just had to confirm the experiences from him too. We began documenting things around the house that seemed unusual, like doors opening on their own or lights flickering without reason. It felt like whatever was there was trying to make its presence known, but we couldn't figure out why. The experiences escalated over time, and it started to feel more oppressive. We'd hear whispers or feel cold spots in certain rooms, especially near that old path in the backyard. Eventually, after talking it over, my dad decided it was best to sell the house. We moved out not long after, and I've never looked back. To this day, I wonder if that shed had something to do with it, or maybe some forgotten history tied to the land. If anyone has similar stories or ideas about what it could have been, I'd love to hear them. We had found a road that led to the most beautiful place that I have honestly ever seen, as it was already dark at this point in time. We didn't see what the road was like when we drove down, so at this moment, we hardly noticed the mud and the rocks sticking out of it. After a bumpy descent, we reached our beautiful spot and set up our tents, and everything was perfect. The following day, we were just relaxing and swimming and just having a good time when me and the main driver of the group, Joey, decided to go to a store to get some snacks and drinks one night. As we were driving up the road, we noticed something that we hadn't seen the night before. Mud and a single giant rock were blocking our path. After discussing the issue, we decided to dig the bastard out and hoped that after we did this, we could continue driving up the road. As we were digging, a man and his dog came down the road with an old SUV and saw us struggling with the rock. He seemed friendly and told us that he was a local who wanted to go for a swim and offered to tow us out of there. As he was doing so, he told us that he had towed many people out of there before, and that we should park the car on a less steep part of the road, which was a lot farther back from our camping spot. Mind you, when we got back from the store, but when our car was towed to a more drivable part of the road, the man took off to swim at another spot. I know that this seems trivial, but according to my friends, this is an important part of the story. So we went to get our groceries, and when we arrived, we parked our car near the spot the man had advised us to park. We took our things and walked down the road to find our friend had achieved the impossible. He actually dug out the entire rock. But the only thing that we needed to do was roll the rock off the newly dug pit to the side of the road and fill up the hole that it had left in the road. We did just that, and we were able to drive the car back to our camping spot without any problems. This is a very vital part to the story too, because without the car, the following part of the story would have been a whole lot more creepy. As night fell, we decided to have dinner. Our camping spot consisted of two main parts. We had the dead end of the road where we set up our tents, and we had a narrow trail off about, say, 30 meters long that led to a small peninsula. When we were on this peninsula, we had no vision of the tents due to the slight elevation and the density of the trees and all that. Because this peninsula was just so beautifully, truly had an idyllic view on the river and the wildlife park. On the opposite side of the river, we decided to have dinner there instead. Me and my girlfriend and one of the other friends started preparing our meals while the other two just remained near the tents to just have some time together. They're a couple and all. As we were preparing dinner, I got a bit bored and got one of the inflatable boats to paddle around on the river and look at the stars. Nothing creepy had happened so far, but when I got back, however, my girlfriend and the friend there had heard a few dogs barking really aggressively about 50 to 100 meters away from camp. Since it was a pretty untouched area, and since we knew the fishermen we encountered before had dogs with them, we initially didn't think much of it, to be honest. Some time went by, though, and I noticed that I hadn't seen Joey and his girlfriend in some time, so I decided to go up the pathway to our tents to look for them. I called their names, but I didn't get any answer. Still not expecting anything had happened, I go on gathering some supplies for dinner. Suddenly, however, and remember, it's pitch black at this point, I only had my torch on me. Two friends that I couldn't find, they ran down the road in my direction in a total panic. In the meantime, I heard the dogs barking again, and this time it seemed closer than 100 meters. As my friends saw me, they started explaining what happened. Apparently, they wandered off up the road about 150 meters or so from the tents to sit and watch the river or something when they heard footsteps coming in their direction. Because they didn't have a torch or phone with a light on them. They initially got scared, and Joey started shouting, "Who's there?" but got no answer. They then decided to go back to camp because things were getting a little bit creepy. When they got up and started walking, they noticed the footsteps were still going in their direction. Pretty terrified at this point, they decided to run, and as they did, the footsteps behind them went faster and faster until Joey and his girlfriend were near the car where my light was shining on them. It was only when they stepped into my light that the footsteps stopped. As they told me this, the dogs were still going crazy, and not knowing whether there was a real danger, I decided to get into the car, which was, thanks to the great digging work of the other friend, near our tents now. So we stepped into the car with me in the driver's seat and the other two in the back. I locked the car and put on the headlights, shining up the road. Of course, my girlfriend and the other friend were still on the peninsula cooking dinner. Joey got out to get them, and the dogs were still barking in the same manner they did before. And when everyone got in the car, we tried to rationalize what happened. Joey seemed a bit more calm than before and shared my opinion it was probably just an animal, and the dogs that we were hearing were probably reacting to that animal. The others, however, were not as convinced of that. Joey's girlfriend, who was the first to hear the footsteps, swears that they were definitely human, and the others followed this idea. And ultimately, we decided to just get our stuff and find some other place to camp, mind you. It was about 1 o'clock in the morning at this point, so as we weren't sure if it was safe outside, we remained in the car for a bit to check the surroundings and to hear if the barking would stop. But the barking kept on going for a while, but then it just suddenly stopped. But when it stopped, I noticed a shadow crossing the road just where the headlights hit the ground. I have no clue what it was, but it was fast, and as Joey's girlfriend stated, it definitely looked human. After a while, me and the two other men got out of the car, and we started packing our stuff in order to just get the hell out of there. One of us kept an eye on the dark woods around us, while the other two were packing. We heard the dogs barking again, but not as close as before. And finally, when everything was packed, we got in the car and we got the hell out of there now. I'm aware that the thing we encountered is possibly or maybe even likely just an animal. But after I did some thinking, it came to my mind that the two things mentioned earlier may have played a part in this. Obviously, we met the fishermen earlier on, and they had dogs, not the sweet golden retriever types, and these guys seemed a bit eerie. Some of us thought that it could have been one of these guys that tried to sneak up on us. Also, the friendly Frenchman who towed us off the road and advised us to park higher up on the road, he was the only one who knew exactly where we were. My paranoid mind might think that this man may have come back for us, and that he had deliberately advised us to park our car somewhere else so that we wouldn't have any form of protection. And last but not least, Joey's girlfriend still insists that she definitely heard human footsteps. Anyway, what or who it was is still pretty unknown too this day, but let's just be happy that nothing too bad happened to us. About 2 or 3 years ago during the spring, I was out for a weekend run along the river path in my city. It was about mid-morning, and seeing as there is a very popular restaurant and shops facility close by, this trail is fairly well used. This morning, there were small groups of people around, not overly busy, but thankfully busy enough. Otherwise, the following encounter would have been a lot more scary than it was. So I'm partway down the trail, and I pass a guy out walking. Yeah, who just as I run past, says, "Hello." I returned a hello, and shortly after I pass him, I hear footsteps close behind me. I glanced back, assuming it was another jogger, and wanted to make sure they had room to pass. But no, it was the guy I just passed, and he was running behind me now. An important thing to note is that he was not in running attire. He was wearing jeans, a warm outdoor puffy vest, and a scarf, and non-running shoes. I found him being behind me really odd, since he had been walking the opposite direction as me, so would have had to have turned around to run behind me. So I sped up my pace, and well, he sped up his pace too. So I sped up again, and so did he. I might add, at this point, that he sounded pretty winded, since I didn't think he was a regular runner, and I kept increasing my speed. On the third time that he was catching up to me, he proclaimed, "Got you." And at this point, I had moved from thinking that this was just odd to being a bit frightened and unsure what his intentions were, though it was broad daylight in a public place. So I yelled over my shoulder, "Please leave me alone." And he replied with, "Oh, sorry," which I thought would have been the end of it. But no, he kept running behind me, really close now. We were approaching a group of 3 people walking at this point, so I started jogging past them, but did a quick U-turn right behind them, yelled back at him, "Stop following me," and sprinted back past the way that I had come. As I had hoped, there was no way that he could follow me now without raising the suspicions of other people. And so, that is where the story ends. I've had a few bad experiences over the years, as I usually travel solo and do a lot of things by myself in my city. Yeah, but this was the one that really made me wonder, what was he planning to do? Did he actually have ill intentions, or was he just mentally ill, socially awkward, and actually thought that there was nothing wrong with chasing someone? If it was a place or time of day with less people, would something worse have happened? I've thankfully never met him again, so that at least eases my mind that he wasn't someone stalking one of my regular jogging routes or something. But I sure hope that I don't ever see him again, so this is going to be a bit out there for most people. But what I'm about to share with you guys is true and actually happened to me. If you choose not to believe me, that's fine. I mean, I wouldn't expect you to, but just don't be a dick about it, okay? This all happened around late May to early June in 2017. I lived out in Kentucky and have been there my whole life. I saved up some money and bought my first AR rifle. I had wanted one for a while, but just never really had the money to get one. So as soon as I got a chance, I grabbed it. I needed to sight in my gun after I bought it. And my family owns 20+ acres of land. So I don't go to gun ranges around here because, well, first of all, people are dumb. The local one has bullet holes in the ceiling, and second, I prefer shooting on my own land. I had managed to grab a Magpul 60-round drum magazine at Gander Mountain because they were having a going out of business sale. So, I guess really, I was going to sight in the gun and test out the magazine's reliability, too. I barely had the magazine out of the box and had not gotten a chance to shoot it yet. But I looked up a bunch of reviews and could never find one that had the problems mine did that day. So, this is where things started to get a bit odd. My family has owned this land, and I've been shooting on it for decades. Nothing weird has ever happened here, that I know of at least. And I've taken people to the spot that this happened, and nothing has recreated the feelings that I had that day. I grabbed my gun, the drum, the 20 rounds of ammo, and went outside to cross over to our field. But to get to the field, I have to go through a barbed wire fence and about 300 feet of wooded area. But the moment I crossed over the barbed wire, something just felt off. I've been over there 1,000 times before, and like I said, nothing like this had ever happened down there. I've never had any weird experiences there, but something just felt off that day, like something just wanted me to leave. Maybe I kept going, though, because nothing had ever happened out there before, and I just thought maybe I was being paranoid, or the wind and the air pressure were just right to give an eerie feeling or something. I walk out deeper into the woods. The further I get, though, the stronger the feeling is. I feel like I'm being watched, like something nearby is just staring into my soul. I keep going, and I get halfway, and this feeling is borderline unbearable now. I stopped dead in my tracks and think to myself that something is off. Well, like I've said 1,000 times,